Hi, everybody. My name is Sabrina Vizzini. I'm the lead physician assistant with Telemedica. Welcome. And if you guys could let me know who all's here and what branch you served in, we'll go ahead and get started. A little bit of information on me. I am a retired Army veteran. I served in the active duty Army and Army National Guard for 20 years, recently retired just in 2022. Started off as a combat medic, went to the IPAP, which is the military's PA school, and ended up as a PA for the military. And then I retired. When I was in, I did a couple combat deployments and mainly stayed in Fort Hood, the great place. And after I got out, I discovered Telemedica, and I love their mission of helping veterans get their service connections and have worked my way up to the lead PA. So here I am. Okay. So I guess we will go ahead and get started. So today's session is going to be mainly about chart reviews and medical evidence. Here at Telemedica, we have started a brand new chart review process. It's a very comprehensive chart review process. And it is in order to us to better evaluate your medical evidence. There are some pros and there are some cons to this process. And we'll go ahead and get the cons out of the way because I always like to end on a positive note. So it is a lot more time consuming for you guys, the veterans, because we do ask you to upload as much of your medical records that you have, preferably all of them, which I know can be a pain once if you've moved or you've gone to multiple specialists, and if you're getting care outside of the VA. Oh, hi, Eduardo. Coast Guard. Yes, I didn't meet very many of you guys when I was in the service, but you are noted and not forgotten. I hear you guys have the toughest basic training out of all the branches. That's what I heard. Just don't tell the Marines that, okay? So as I was saying, so on your end, it's a lot more time consuming because we do ask that you request all your records from all your different specialists, all your different primary care offices, and things like that. But there is a method behind the madness. So the more medical records that we have, the more we are able to evaluate all of your medical conditions instead of just one or two, to be able to get a better picture of your medical history and to see all of your medical evidence that see if they might support service connection. Additionally, having all of your medical evidence lets us make sure that we are not missing valuable pieces of information that might contradict the claim that you're presenting to the VA and could lead to a higher likelihood of a denial for you. For example, for ED claims, there are several different causes of ED. So having all of our medical evidence available allows us to make sure that you don't have, say, a low testosterone level, because if you present a claim to the VA for ED, say secondary to a depression or a PTSD, and you have a low testosterone lab that we were not aware of because we didn't have all your medical evidence, that can lead to a higher likelihood of a denial. Hi, Derek. Navy. I do have a lot of Navy friends, so very jealous of you guys. You guys always seem to be stationed by pretty beaches. So welcome to our stream. So the big con for you guys is it's more time consuming, but the pro on the opposite side of that con is with all of your medical evidence, we are able to identify potentially additional conditions that you didn't even think were potentially service connected as service connected. So that is why we do that now. Some of the main documents that Telemedica offers are the Nexus Letter and the DBQ. So the Nexus Letter is a medical opinion document. So normally when you go see your specialist or your primary care provider for a condition, they are focused on evaluating you, doing your exam, and updating your diagnosis with whatever they feel your condition warrants, and then they treat you. So they want to make sure that they are using established medical evidence to provide you a diagnosis and treat your condition, which is great. That's what they're there to do. A lot of times they don't have a lot of time. A lot of these appointments, especially in primary care offices, are 15 or 20 minutes. They don't really have a lot of time to write a lot of details under your diagnosis. I think clients' headaches are caused by tinnitus or aggravated by tinnitus. It's very rare that you're going to see that in a documentation note. And a lot of times for some of these newer research articles are your standard treating provider doesn't have a lot of time to go through the thousands and thousands of medical evidence articles that come out every couple years that has updated research and connections. And here at Telemedica, we have providers that's what we do. We review the latest research and we write medical opinion letters. So basically, for a Nexus letter, we review all the medical evidence that you have provided, say for a headache to a tinnitus claim, and we review all of the latest research on headaches being aggravated by tinnitus. And we write a medical documentation that contains the history of your particular condition, how often you have headaches, what are they triggered by, what associated symptoms do you have with the headaches? And then we also present the evidence as to why we feel that your headaches are aggravated by your tinnitus and why the medical research supports that your headaches are aggravated by your tinnitus. Then at the end of our Nexus document, we'll provide what's called a Nexus statement, which is basically our professional medical opinion stating, in this case for our example, that your headaches are aggravated by your tinnitus and therefore should be service connected, assuming, of course, that your tinnitus is service connected. The other main document that we provide for our veterans is something called a DBQ document. So this is not a medical opinion document. This is a VA form that is used for rating purposes, and it focuses on the VA rating criteria for that condition. So for this example, headaches. This document asks a lot of details. How often do you have headaches? Are they come with prostrating attacks, meaning that you aren't able to function in those attacks? Are there any associated symptoms such as light sensitivity or noise sensitivity? And does this condition, in this case headaches, impact your ability to work? The point of this document is to hopefully, it doesn't always work, but to hopefully give you a chance to bypass having to do a CMP exam. And that's mainly the main reason why we recommend that you do a DBQ. On top of these main two, which are the most common ones that we are requested from veterans, we do offer some specialty documentations. There's things called a P&T letter. If you are 100% service connected, it basically allows you to, it's basically a document that states that these limitations, these connections are permanent and you're unlikely to improve. And that way your rating stays static, meaning it won't change. We offer a couple other ones, such as a TDIU document, and that is where if you are 100% service connected, if you have the proper supporting documentation, it basically states your service connected disabilities are so severe that you can't work. Now, there is a downside to that. If you get this documentation and get this status, you really can't work. You can only do a couple of like side gigs here and there, but you cannot be employed full time. So again, couple specialty documents, but our big ones are the Nexus Letter and DBQ. In order to best help us help you, we do have some pro tips on how you guys could help us in uploading your medical documentation. So when you upload your medical documentation, it would be best if you uploaded it in, say, a PDF format, which is easily searchable, versus like screenshots or JPEGs. Those are a little bit harder to see. It makes it a little bit harder on us to read them and to help you. Also, if you could upload the documentation in, say, either like chronological order so we can get a better quote unquote medical story, when your symptoms started, when they got worse, so we can establish things like your baseline of aggravation, which is very helpful for secondary claims, Or another good way to organize your medical documentation and upload it would be by condition. Have a folder for headaches or a folder for GERD or anything like that. And that way you'll have all your imaging or lab results and diagnosis and treatment records and individual files for a certain condition. That also helps us out, which in turn helps you. Another important thing to discuss again would be the types of medical evidence or types of evidence in general that can be uploaded with your claim. So the big one and the ones that we look at a lot would be the objective medical evidence. These are things like your actual encounter notes that contain your diagnosis or radiology reports that shows degenerative arthritis of your back. One important note, though, with the radiology reports is this cannot be a standalone document. You can't upload a MRI or an X-ray of your back that says degenerative changes and then use that as a degenerative arthritis diagnosis for your back. You have to have the corresponding encounter note or treatment record that shows that a provider diagnosed you with degenerative arthritis of your back. However, the radiology report is still considered an objective piece of medical evidence because it's showing a finding, an objective finding of what's going on in your back and does strengthen your claim. So it is important. It just cannot be used as a standalone document. Other things that would be considered objective medical evidence would be like a lab result. So if you are trying to get your hypothyroidism connected, so if you have results of your TSH or T3 or T4, and then you have a high TSH, low T3, T4, definitely will strengthen your claim. But again, like the radiology report, that can't be a standalone document. You would still need your diagnosis from your encounter document from your provider. Other pieces of objective medical evidence is you can actually get letters from these providers. I had a good one earlier today where I was working on a migraine claim and a client had a letter from the provider where the provider literally stated, "This is my patient. I'm seeing them for migraines. They have headaches so-and-so times a week, and they are currently taking so-and-so drug." That is awesome. That definitely helps, especially on our things like DBQs, where it's asking specific details on how often certain things are occurring in order to meet their VA criteria for a rating. There's also other types of medical evidence that are not considered objective, but are also important for your claims. Because not everything that happens to you obviously is happening in a medical office. You guys have lives, you guys go to work, you guys had coworkers in the military, and they were probably able to witness some of your symptoms for some of your conditions. So personal statements, you can write a personal statement. You could have your spouse write a personal statement. So in the cases such as sleep apnea, a spouse who is willing to write that they've witnessed the snoring or witnessed you not being able to breathe, things like that. Or in the case of headaches, having your military buddies, your coworkers when you were in service, or even coworkers now, right, that they've seen you have to leave work because of your headaches, or seen you had to go lie down in a dark office because of your headaches. These help to establish the frequency and severity of your symptoms and are used to support the objective medical records, such as your treatment note that has your diagnosis of your headaches or your sleep apnea. So even though they're not considered objective, it does help to fill in the details of your medical story, so to speak, and does help strengthen your claim that way. But the sworn statements on their own, since they are not considered objective medical evidence, usually cannot be used to file your claim alone. That would be considered a fairly weak claim. Other pieces of medical evidence are trigger journals or symptom journals. A popular one that I see a lot would be the Migraine Buddy for your migraine symptoms. Other things can be like a diet and exercise log. if you're looking at some obesity-related conditions to establish that, yes, you've tried to lose weight, you've tried to work out, and it's not working, and things like that. The VA definitely looks at those and definitely brings them up if they're not present in some of their denial letters that I've read. Um, Another document that we do offer that I should have mentioned earlier, speaking of denials, is a rebuttal document. If you have previously received a Nexus letter from Telemedica and were denied that connection, we do offer a rebuttal letter service where we will review the VA's denial and see if we can support a rebuttal letter to help you try and refile your claim. So I know I just threw a lot of information at you guys. Do you guys have any questions for me? So how do you get started with Telemedica? So you contact us, and we should be putting that information on the board, and you sign up with us, and you will get connected with one of our representatives, and we will sign you up for a chart review. And that is that big comprehensive chart review I was discussing earlier. And we go from there. Let's see, I got a couple questions here. Is there a cost for that letter, for the rebuttal letters or the Nexus letters? So once you sign up with Telemedica, or even prior to signing up with Telemedica, you can contact our customer service person, because depending on how comprehensive of a letter we write for you, it does change the cost. So there's not one single cost I can give you. It varies. And we also have discounts if you purchase more than one document. So the short answer is yes, there's a cost for our documents. What the cost is, that varies depending on how much detail and how many you're purchasing, but that's something that Telemedica can information our customer service can provide for you. Okay, I got a long question here. 2 times ambulance tech stated I was having vertigo when I arrived at the hospital. They gave you shots. I was told that was for vertigo. Okay, so this is a specific, we're already working on a Nexus letter for you, it sounds. Okay. So in order to better answer that question, I'd have to know more about your case. And more than likely, you have already been assigned to one of our providers. So please reach out to our customer service team if you're having a hard time getting your questions answered, and they'll make sure that your provider is aware that you have a question. Or if you haven't signed up yet, sign up with us, get assigned to one of the providers, and we can answer your question that way. Let's see. How can you get the VA medical personnel to put a diagnosis in your medical history? They just keep treating symptoms. On that note, sometimes symptoms are enough, sometimes, for a claim, depending on the symptoms. In order to get more details on that, we would recommend you sign up for us. But as far as how to get a diagnosis in your medical history, I guess that would depend on the diagnosis. So for example, in the case of IBS, yes, a lot of times medical providers will start off with the general diagnosis of diarrhea or constipation, because conditions like that are kind of considered diagnoses of exclusion, meaning that more serious conditions are ruled out prior to saying that somebody has IBS. And the reason is that's done is because constipation, diarrhea, those can be symptoms of some serious medical conditions, and that if we just slap a label of IBS on there, we could be missing something serious as providers that needs a completely different treatment plan than IBS. So usually when you see your provider, if you're looking for a condition that's considered a diagnosis of exclusion, common ones being IBS or say chronic fatigue syndrome, it's going to take more than one encounter, because they're going to want to do some lab testing, sometimes some certain imaging or diagnostic procedures to make sure there's not something more serious causing your symptom. So I would say follow up with your provider for your specific symptom and ask them specifically what other studies or imaging needs to be done in order to arrive at a definitive diagnosis. Let's see, I've got some more here. Can the VBA use a previous CMP exam as evidence against me in a new mental health claim? Okay, so again, that's another pretty specific question that would require looking specifically at your case. If you haven't signed up with us, Telemedica does have a psych department, and we help people with that psych or mental health claims as well. So please sign up with Telemedica and we can assist you with that part. Let's see, I'm trying to make sure I did not miss anybody. Any other questions? What are the difference between a primary and secondary service connection? Okay, so primary service connection is when you're trying to get that condition directly connected to your service. So this means that your condition or symptom began in service. So say you had knee pain, you were doing PT, you injured your knee, was never right again. You went to sick call a few times. You've got some documentation that you were seen for knee pain, and then you continue to have pain outside of your service. You're being seen by your private medical providers or the VA providers, and you have a diagnosis of tendonitis or arthritis of your knee. So on that would be considered a direct to service claim because the symptom of that condition started while you were serving on an active duty status. So that's important. In order to be direct to service, the symptom of the condition must have started on an active duty status. So if you're a reservist or a National Guard member and you weren't on an active duty status, you were, it was a weekend, you're at home playing basketball and you started having knee pain, even though you're technically in the service because you're a Guard member or a reservist, you were not in an activated status at that time. That was not going to count for a direct to service claim. Now, secondary conditions are something that we connect to your already service connected condition. So, a popular one is again headache to tinnitus. We'll have clients who are service connected for tinnitus, and then they start to develop headaches, and their headaches are triggered by or aggravated by their service connection of tinnitus. So, in this case, their headaches did not necessarily start on an active duty status. Their tinnitus did, and they're service connected for tinnitus, but that tinnitus is aggravating headaches. So in that case, it's considered a secondary connection because it is being connected to a service connected condition, but it did not start on active duty. And there are several like that. We'll have IBS, secondary to mental health conditions, ED, secondary to mental health conditions. I see that one a lot. OSA is often secondary to a lot of separate conditions as well. Let's see. I'm having an infinitely hard time getting my in-service medical records. Yes, I can understand that. I did too. I've had a request with the National Archive for 11 plus months and a request with the VA for 5 months. Any advice? So especially for our older veterans who were pre-digital era, pre-electric medical records, it can be extremely difficult to get these in-service medical records. I don't have any specific advice other than sometimes contacting the troop military facilities where you were seen or the troop hospitals on your bases. They have their own medical records department, and it might be a little bit quicker to contact those on-post clinics a little directly instead of waiting for the generalized military request. Same thing for the VA clinics. A lot of times you can contact them directly. The VA is a little bit more unified than the actual, like for example, for me, when I was leaving active duty, I found that it was quicker for me to contact Darnell and Fort Hood, and I was able to get my medical records sent to me, emailed to me, along with a disc, other than waiting for my general total military medical records from the Army. So I would contact the on-post bases and those facilities directly. 2002, me too. That's when I served. Same problem. EMRs are becoming a thing, but they weren't completely all electronic yet. Yeah, contact the hospitals and the clinics on post directly. Sometimes that helps. How much documentation do you recommend prior to submitting a claim? Been seen 3 times for migraines. Should I say 8 treatments before submitting a claim? So again, that's more specific to, oh, you're welcome, Gavin. That's more specific to conditions. I will say you definitely need to have current treatment records to support your claim. So current generally for us means records within 1 to 2 years of the certain condition that you're trying to claim. And the reason for that is we have to prove that you are still having trouble or have a current disability from the problem. So, for example, in this case, migraines. If the last time anyone saw you or treated you for migraines was 10 years ago, the VA is very unlikely to approve that as service connected. Because again, you could write a statement saying that you're still suffering from migraines 2 to 3 times a week, but there's no objective medical evidence to support that claim. It just looks like you haven't been seen for migraines, so they're going to say that you haven't have a current disability or problem with them because if you had, you would have been seen. Right or wrong, that's how they look at it. So it's not necessarily the number of times, but just how current your visits have been. That being said, for a lot of these secondary connections, it is important to establish well, a lot of these primary connections and secondary, it is important to establish a history of certain conditions. So, for in the case of a primary, if you're trying to say that your knee pain began on active duty, but it's been a few years since you left service and you're trying to do a primary connection, it is very helpful if you have been seen within a couple years of leaving service and have continued to have fairly regular visits with a provider documenting that yes, and you have in fact had knee pain throughout all these years. So things like that. So there's not a magic number. It's best that you have a nice history showing you've had these problems for a while. But if it's a new onset condition, as long as it's current, a lot of times we can work with that as well. And let's see. So difference between a nexus and a DBQ, we kind of cover. Oh, you're welcome, Jeff. Difference between a nexus and DBQ, we kind of covered that a little bit already. So the nexus letter is a medical opinion document. That's where we talk a little bit about the condition you're suffering from, your history with it, how it's triggered by, what conditions it's triggered by, and how it's impacting you. And then we write in that same document the current medical research to support how this is connected to your either primary to your service or secondary to your service. And then at the end of that document, we write what's called a nexus statement, which is basically our medical opinion that this condition is either primary or secondarily related to your service and why. And the whole nexus letter supports that medical opinion or that nexus statement. The nexus statement is basically just a statement saying this condition is connected to your service in this way. A DBQ, again, the point of the DBQ is it's a VA form and it focuses on the rating criteria. So all the questions and information that are on that form is basically meant to meet the bullet points of the VA rating criteria. And the hope behind the DBQ is that it allows you to bypass the CMP exam. Well, I think that's about. Oh, I have one more question. Why does the diagnosis have to be current? So we kind of covered that a little bit already. If your last time you were seen for a condition was 10 years ago, it doesn't look like the condition's bothering you very much or that it's causing you a disability, meaning it's not impacting your life in a negative way enough in order to support service connection. If you tried to file a claim with a condition that's 10 years old, records that are 10 years old, and nothing more current than that, the VA is going to assume that this condition isn't bothering you and is very unlikely to award service connection. I think I got everyone's questions. Okay, so if I don't have any additional questions, I think that's about all the time we have. We should be doing these at least monthly, and we'll have different topics. You guys are more than welcome. Oh, I have one more question. What can a reservist do about a profile diagnosis without much med records? So again, this is a little bit more of a specific question, what condition was diagnosed, things like that. There's definitely something to work with there, but I would definitely need to have more specifics. So please sign up with us for a chart review, and that's where we get all those details. I will say we've worked with things like that in the past and have had some success with that. So please, reach out to us or go to our website for details on how to sign up with us for a chart review. And just make sure if you sign up for a chart review, you upload the profile and whatever medical documentations you have. That would be helpful. All right, guys, I think that's all the time we have for today. Keep an eye out on our site because we'll definitely be doing these at least monthly. And we'll talk soon, hopefully. You're very welcome. Oh, thanks. I love taking care of the vets, seeing as how I am one and half my family. All right, guys. You guys have a great day.